So it's the mid-1970s, and the portable music format of the decade is, of course, the 8-track tape. And you listen to them in your car, but what if you wanted a way to listen to them while in bed, and even to set the alarm to go off to the 8-track in the morning? Well, there were several clock radios available, such as this Sears model, that had a built-in 8-track player, so you could pop in your favorite 8-track cartridge, listen to your favorite music while sitting in bed, and then you could set the alarm to go off to the 8-track when you want to wake up. So that way you can wake up to whatever song you want to. Well, what about the 1980s? The 8-track was long dead, and what if you wanted to listen to your favorite cassette while relaxing in bed? Well, just like the 8-track, there were plenty of clock radios available with a built-in cassette player. And you could even set the alarm to go off to the cassette. So again, you could wake up to your favorite song in the morning. But what about the 1990s? The cassette tape still lingered on through this decade, but compact discs were the new big thing. So could you get a clock radio that plays CDs? Well, yes, but they weren't really as numerous as their tape-playing counterparts. I searched and searched online to find as many examples as I could, but I really couldn't find more than 5. In fact, less than 5. The funny thing is, there were probably more clocks built with cassette decks than CD players in the 90s. But nevertheless, this is one of the few clock radios that has a built-in CD player. This is the General Electric model number 7-4890A, one of the few clock radio CD players built in the 1990s. Now, there were a lot of them built more recently in the 21st century, but most of them just don't have that vintage aesthetic. They're oddly shaped, have complicated button arrangements, and some are even cheaper built than this one. And I think that just may be the reason that not many of them existed in the 90s, despite that being the height of the compact disc. Clock radios were starting to decline and lose interest, and they were being built more and more cheaply as the decade went on. But this one was probably top of the line in its day because there weren't many other ones that played CDs. So without further ado, let's have a closer look at this thing. Starting out, you can see we have a red LED clock display which has some pretty large numbers. They're almost an inch tall. A lot of clocks during this time started getting larger clock displays. And it's not shy to boast that it plays compact discs. We have a CD logo right here. We have digital CD clock radio on the CD player lid. And above the radio tuning dial, same thing, digital CD clock radio. So they really advertised it on here. The clock measures in at 11 inches wide by about 8.5 inches deep and about 3 inches tall with the CD lid closed. If it's open, it comes in at around 7 inches tall. And the big gray part up here is the CD compartment door. You can see there's no latch or anything on it, you just lift it right up. It is still cushioned though, so that's nice. So yeah, there's the CD compartment, pretty standard. One thing it doesn't have though is a clear window to see the disc inside. You would have thought with all this real estate that they would have added one, but they didn't, so that's kind of disappointing. You can see up top next to that is the speaker grill and the snooze button. And I guess by this time GE finally decided to spell snooze like everyone else and include the E. Over on the right side we have the tuning dial and the volume control, as well as an earphone jack which does play in stereo. There are no other controls on the left side or the back, but if we look underneath, we have our tags for the model information and warnings and all that. And we also have a date code tag. It says July 1999. So even though this was built in the 90s, it was built at the very end of the decade. The only other thing under here is a backup battery slot, so you can put a 9-volt in here to save your clock setting in case the power goes out. There's also this little cubby hole right here. This is a port for the speaker, I guess to give it a little more bass, but you can't really get much out of it because it's like a 2.5-inch speaker or something. While doing research on this clock, I looked at a lot of pictures and none of them had a date before 1999. None of them were 98 or newer, so 1999 is probably the year these were introduced. And you may have heard me mention that this is a 4890A. There were 4890Bs and they were white plastic instead of this smoke gray, but they're a lot harder to come by, it seems. There were a lot of these listed on eBay, but not the B versions. So maybe they were just more rare or they were overseas only, but they're a lot harder to find. Getting back to the front here, you can see that's where most of the controls are. Over on the left hand side here, we have a button labeled music on and one labeled music off. And these are your main on and off buttons for the radio and the CD player. The way you choose between them is this switch way over on the other side. You can set it to AM band, FM band, which is mono only, and CD player. The switch next to that turns your alarm on or off. You can set it to alarm, which is the buzzer, or music, which will set it to whichever one this is set to. So yes, you can wake up to either the radio or the CD player. The way you set the clock on this thing is pretty unique. You hold down this button labeled time, and you actually use the skip buttons for the CD player to go through the time. And you can hold it down and it'll scroll fast, and you can go either forward or reverse. So that's pretty neat the way they designed that. The same thing goes for setting the alarm time. You'll hold down wake time and do the same thing. Next we have the sleep timer button, which sets a timer for the radio or the CD player to go off after a certain time, so that way you can fall asleep to the music without leaving it on. The next button is pretty interesting. It says wake up CD track. It lets you pick which track on the CD the alarm will go off to. So yeah, you can actually pick what it goes off to. If you hold it down, the track number will actually come up on the clock display. And just like everything else, we can use these skip buttons to pick which track we want to wake up to. And one interesting quirk is if there's no disc loaded, you can go all the way up to 99. But when you load a disc, it will restrict to how many tracks are actually on the disc. And all the rest of the buttons are for the CD player. As mentioned, we have the 2 skip buttons, we have play and pause, and we have stop. But we also have shuffle and repeat. So yeah, even on your alarm clock, you can shuffle, play, and repeat the disc. So that's pretty cool. So next we'll try out the radio and see what it sounds like. Again, small speaker, so it won't sound amazing, but it's not too bad. We'll go ahead and set it to FM and press music on. And you can see there's a little indicator light there, which is nice. And we'll see how it works.
Deuteronomy.
Yeah. Yeah.
The United States got caught, now she's gonna.
Like it's 2-0 in favor.
Tuesday night with them ladies.
It has pretty good reception, not as strong as some of my other clocks, but it's pretty decent. We'll try AM, but around this area, it usually is just a constant hum. I guess there's some interference around here. Yeah, this isn't just this radio, this is every radio that I have does that, so sometimes it'll pick something up, but not usually. So AM's not really good around here, but the radio works well, and despite the small speaker, it sounds pretty decent. And now the moment you've all been waiting for, we're gonna try out the CD player. We'll set the function switch to CD and press music on. And you can see it actually indicates CD on the clock display. And it flashes as it reads the disc. And it even tells you when there's no disc. So it's pretty primitive for a CD display, but it's cool that they even included that. And look, it even goes back to the clock after a few seconds. So let's open the lid. It flashes when the lid's open as well. And we'll insert the CD. Close the lid. It's reading again. And one thing that it doesn't do is tell you how many tracks are on the CD when it loads. It just comes up as CD. So that's kind of disappointing. Well, it can't play too much of each song, but let's go ahead and press play and see how it works. Well, as you can see, it works. Just like any other CD player, but it's also an alarm clock. That's just the cool factor about it. As you can see, when we press pause, it also flashes, and it does show the track number while you're playing the disc. Like I said, it just doesn't come up when you load it to tell you how many is on it. At least it's able to tell you what track you're on. And it even comes up automatically as it plays into each new song. I'll go ahead and show that real quick. So yeah, as you can see, when it gets to a new song, the track number automatically comes up. It's cool that they were able to make all this happen on the clock display. It's just neat. And as you can see, the skip buttons work like normal. And if you hold them, you can fast forward and rewind as well. Next, I'll try out the shuffle mode. It works just like any other CD player, but there's a cool animation that happens on the display as it shuffles. So I'll go ahead and cue up a song and check that out. You'll also notice that there are LED lights to indicate whether shuffle and repeat are on. And yeah, check that out. That's cool. You can also shuffle manually with the skip buttons. But yeah, the fact that they included that on top of all the other stuff on a clock display is just mind-boggling. And repeat works like normal too. When it reaches the end of the disc, it'll start back at track 1. Like so. And there you have it. That's the whole operation of the CD player on this alarm clock, which is still weird to say. I do want to point out one thing though. There is no electronic shock protection on it, and it's actually kind of sensitive to shocks. And it'll even induce it on itself if you crank the volume up, as I'll demonstrate. Yeah, so you can't crank this thing too much or it'll make itself skip the disc. Well, I guess it only hates the beginning. But yeah, if you've got some bass heavy CDs or something, then it might mess up playback. And one more interesting quirk is that you can still set the clock while the CD is playing, despite the fact that you're using the skip buttons. So that's pretty interesting. Next, we'll go ahead and test out how the alarm works. I'll go ahead and test out all 3 modes. First the radio, then the buzzer, and then we'll try out the CD. So let's go ahead and see how that works. I have it set to FM, and I'll set it to wake to music. There we go. And as you can see, the snooze button works. And another interesting feature of this clock that I actually just discovered is you can adjust the snooze time by holding it and using the skip buttons. You can go all the way up to 30 minutes or down to 1 minute, or keep it at the traditional 9 minutes. And yeah, I literally just discovered this very moment. Well, now let's see what the buzzer sounds like. And there you can see that's what the buzzer sounds like. And as you saw, it's non-adjustable using the volume knob, so it's a fixed volume. Now for the interesting part, let's try waking up to a CD. Let's load in something different this time. Then we'll set it to CD and wake to music. And then we'll press our wake up CD track button. And I'm thinking number 2 is a good choice. And let's see what happens. Yeah, that'll wake you right up for sure. So as you can see, when it hit the time, the CD automatically started playing and it went to track 2. So yeah, it automatically goes to the track when the alarm goes off, which is pretty neat. You can see that when I hit snooze, the CD is now paused. So the whole time it's in snooze mode, the CD will be paused, and then once the snooze timer ends, it'll resume playing. You'll notice that when it's snoozed and the CD is paused, it just stays flashing on the track number. It doesn't show the time. So it's a mystery as to what time it is until the snooze button ends. So let's go ahead and wait for it to start playing again. And there we go. An alarm clock that pauses the CD when you hit the snooze button. Pretty good ingenuity, actually. The last thing to demonstrate is using the sleep timer with a CD. So just like the radio, you'll hit the button, set the time you want it to stay on for, and then once that timer runs out, it'll stop the radio, or in this case, the CD. So let's see how that works. We'll press sleep. It starts playing the disc. I'll have to lower the volume though for copyright matching. And let's set it to 1 minute, and we'll watch it turn itself off. And just like that, it automatically stops the CD. So as you can see, the way the CD player works in conjunction with the alarm and the sleep timer is it can automatically start, stop, and pause the CD all by itself. So it's pretty neat how it can do all that. Well, that's gonna do it for this radio review of the GE 7-4890A CD clock radio. Again, one of the few during the 90s, even though that was the peak of the compact disc. And cassette clock radios were everywhere in the 80s, more than you can count, yet only a handful of CD player clock radios existed in the 90s. So that's what makes this one so unique. And even though it's not particularly stylish, as most 90s clocks weren't, it still has that nice vintage appeal, and it's an overall pretty good clock. Decent sound quality, decent features, and of course the CD player makes it a lot of fun to use to listen to CDs in bed and wake up to CDs. It's one of my favorites, and it's on my nightstand, and it's a lot of fun to use. So that's gonna do it for this one. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, be sure to leave a like. And if you had one of these back in the day, leave a comment and tell your story. What was it like having it back in the day? So that's it for this one. I want to thank you again for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.